This month on the World Sailing Show, the world's most competitive monohull circuit heads to Puerto. Windsurfing's elite are in northern Italy. And the foiling GC32s head to Portugal for the World Championships. But we start with a look at how a race where all the top French sailing names started out, and many still return, is working to attract a bigger and more competitive international field. In France, offshore sailors are national figures. Millions line the docksides to wave their heroes goodbye as they head for open waters and throng the quays as they return. Whether it's the non-stop and solo round-the-world Vendée Globe, the solo transatlantic Route du Rhum, or any other French offshore classic, its competitors are recognised as pioneers and adventurers. The Vendée is the big one, nearly 100 days at sea, racing non-stop alone around the world. And while some have come close, no non-French sailor has ever stood on the top step of the podium in 30 years and 8 editions.
All these big races are won by French. All the solo transatlantic are starting from France, which means that they are more attractive for French people, French sponsors, French media, and it's really hard for non-French sailors to be part of it. And the only way to try to reach the level you need to be able to do your best is to live in France, is to compete against French guys.
The training ground for the epic ocean races is the Solitaire du Figaro. 4 stamina-sapping 500-mile legs around the English Channel where French solo sailors hone their skills. This year's 50th edition attracted the big guns, including Vendée winners Michel Desjoyeux, Alain Gauthier and Armel Leclerc, and 3-time Solitaire winner Yann Elias. But increasingly, international sailors are joining them. And this year, a new award, the Vivi Trophy, was on offer for the top non-French finisher.
The Vendée Globe is the peak of solo offshore racing. There's a pyramid of other events underneath it. Probably the most important one of those elements in there is the Solitaire du Figaro. For foreigners to be good at this or to get to a certain level, they have to make a massive commitment. I thought it would be a good idea with my wife and some friends to put together a trophy, the Vivi Trophy, which will be awarded to the first non-French skipper every year in the Solitaire du Figaro.
The Solitaire is an amazing race and it's incredibly addictive. It pushes the body and the mind to the limit, and the racing is so close, it's so competitive. There's nothing like it.
It takes experience, confidence, and for sure you need a few years to be at the best level and to really know the boat. For me, it's non-French could win for sure. It's not been the case, but it could happen.
In all, 7 international sailors crossed the starting line of Leg 1, which took the nearly 50 entries from Nantes across to Ireland, around the legendary Fastnet Rock to the port of Kinsale. While the likes of Loïc Perron and Michel Desjoyeux are expected to do well, it was Johan Richomme aboard Hello Work who played the English Channel best. He'd stepped in as a late replacement for Volvo Ocean Race winner Charles Caudrelier and was a surprise victor of Leg 1.
Well, I feel pretty good. I've arrived at the good time on Thursday, just before night time, so I had a full night of sleep. So now I feel great, fully recharged the batteries, and I'm ready to go. It's going to be another long leg.
The best of the non-French sailors was Justine Matreau in 14th aboard Teamwork, while for New Zealand rookie Conrad Coleman aboard Ethical Power, it had been an eye-opener.
All the stories I've heard for the last 10 years of Figaro, you don't sleep, you have to fight all the time, and yeah, it's very clearly true. And we cut through the Chaussée de Saint, in between 2 rocks with loads of current, and the boat was jumping up and down and going completely insane. That's when I realized that everybody who does a Figaro has no brain. Don't quote me on that.
Stage 2 saw the boats head back to France via the Scilly Isles and then loop around the Needles off the Isle of Wight before the finish on the Brittany coast at Roscoff. There was another new face at the top as Adrienne Hardy came home ahead. After a disappointing 28th place finish in Leg 1, Briton Will Harris was top of the international contenders in 11th.
It's really tricky, a windy leg, so a lot of people have had issues with issues to actually get to the finish line, so I'm really happy to finish in the place I have and up with some really good guys.
Stage 3 was an out and return circuit into the English Channel, but it was anything but simple. Light winds and an exclusion zone mid-channel around a busy shipping lane scattered the fleet and exhausted both the sailors and their food supplies. Anthony Marchand aboard Groupe Royer completed the course in 2 days, 19 hours. Despite finishing down in 13th, Johan Richomme held on to the overall lead. The top international finisher was again Will Harris in 9th, but the race for the Vivi Trophy was still wide open. The final leg was 500 miles across to the Scilly Isles, along past the Isle of Wight, and back across the Channel to the finish in Dieppe. After light winds early on, the breeze picked up and the big names climbed to the front. By now, Johan Richomme was keeping an eye on his rivals for the overall win, staying close to the main competition. After another drawn-out epic, Eric Perron arrived in Dieppe after 3 days, 19 hours and 59 minutes. But just 7 minutes behind was Johan Richomme. 4th place on the leg gave him overall victory by 1 hour, 13 minutes over runner-up Gildas Mahé. Having won the Route du Rhum last November, it's been a big 6 months for the 35-year-old who made this his second solitaire victory. Top non-French sailor and winner of the inaugural Vivi Trophy was Alan Roberts, who finished 15th overall in the race and just 8.5 minutes ahead of Justine Matreau after 14 days at sea.
It was such a privilege to be racing alongside and beating some of these guys and seeing that they are human as well. Very happy to win the VV Trophy. Absolutely right that we generate some noise about this in the international press. You know, it's a great course and we'd love to have more skippers here to race against, and yeah, brilliant.
Though sailing has been dropped from the Paralympics, it's still a thriving branch of the sport, as attendance at the 2019 Para World Championships confirmed. Nearly 100 sailors from 28 nations set sail at Puerto in Spain, with 60 races scheduled to take place over 4 classes during the 7 days of competition. Star of the show was French 2.4-metre sailor Damien Seguin, who completed his trajectory to the top step of the podium after a bronze and then a silver at the last 2 World Championships. Seguin won 9 of the 12 qualification races to secure the gold ahead of the medal race, which he also won.
Of course, I'm happy because when I come in this World Championship, I know I had to do my best, and I did my best on water. So I'm really happy for this 5th title.
Violeta del Reino from Spain won the women's Hansa 303 gold, Piotr Cichowski from Poland the men's. Wrapping up the 4-class Para-World results table, Italians Fabrizio Olmi and Davide De Maria won the RS venture in a winner-takes-all final race. Across the Iberian Peninsula in Portugal, Lagos in the south hosted the 2nd edition of the GC32 World Championship. 4 days and 10 teams competing in one design, foiling, flying machines. Defending champions Team Tilt knew they were in for a tough fight.
As we won last year, it's quite easy to call us the favorite or a defender, but we have a very different approach because we have only 10 days training and we know all the other teams have been sailing for the last year. So we're feeling ourselves more like challengers and going out there with really nothing much to lose and nothing to prove, but just having fun and doing our best and see what we can do. And we know that if we sail well, we have a chance of winning again.
Day 1 began with a southwesterly gusting to 17 knots across Lagos Bay, and in the opening 2 races, it was Alinghi who came out on top, finishing both races ahead of Oman Air. Conditions changed for race 3, and a lighter northwesterly meant a different course configuration with reaching starts. This time Oman Air took the honours, before Alinghi won again in the penultimate race of the day. In the 5th, it was Sir Ben Ainsley's Ineos Rebels UK who took the win, leaving them 3rd overall, behind Oman Air and Alinghi.
We had 2 bad races, but we won 3 races, so we can recover from that, and everyone are pushing really hard, and I think there is 5 teams that can win this championship. It's the game, everyone said really well, so it's going to be a really great event, and we're looking forward to tomorrow.
Warm sunshine and a continuing northwesterly greeted the teams on day 2, and defending champions Team Tilt took the opening race, guided by the hand of America's Cup winning skipper, Australian Glenn Ashby. But Ashby couldn't hold off French multi-hull legend Frank Camas, who steered Narauto to win the final 2 races. Consistency, though, is what sent the Swiss Alinghi team to the top of the leaderboard at the halfway stage. No result lower than 5th opened up the lead for Alinghi ahead of Oman Air and Ineos Rebels.
We had a pretty tough day today, really. It was great conditions out there, but for one reason or another we couldn't really get things firing on our boat. Having said that, we're up at the top end of the fleet. It's been fantastic racing and a really good challenge for all of the teams. And we look forward to getting back out there and getting some more good racing tomorrow.
Day 3, lighter winds again and a reduced 3-race schedule. While others struggled, the experienced and versatile Alinghi team were fast in these conditions and took victory in the opening 2 races to take control of the regatta, helped by rivals Oman Air finishing last in the second race of the day. Ineos Rebels UK were the winners of the final race of the day. Having been down in 8th at the first top mark, Ben Ainsley brought out his legendary Olympic tactical skills to record a second victory of the week. He and Oman Air's Adam Minoprio were tied in second heading into the final day, ahead of the fast-improving Team Tilt, but Alinghi had a 16-point lead and one hand on the trophy.
We had a pretty terrible day. Started off quite promising, but just very tricky out there. Just felt like no matter what way I went today, the breeze went the opposite. So pretty disappointed to lose 13 points to Alinghi today. But still 5 races tomorrow, so if we can just go out there and win them all, and hopefully Alinghi will give us some points back.
It's been a fantastic week of racing here thus far. All to play for tomorrow. Whilst Alinghi have a tiny little gap at the moment, tomorrow 5 races, anything can happen. I think there's only 2 points between 2nd and 4th place at the moment. So we're really in with a good chance of finishing on the podium. We have to keep sailing well and pushing hard.
The teams woke up to perfect sailing conditions for the final day, and still Alinghi were dominant. The Swiss won 2 of the first 3 races to claim the World Championship with 2 races to spare. Ineos Rebels suffered 2 collisions on the final day, which allowed Team Tilt to pip them for 2nd overall, but the UK team held on to the final podium spot. But the week belonged to Ernesto Bertarelli's Alinghi. The consistently fast Swiss team crowned 2019 GC32 World Champions.
The team did a really good job because we've been on the top of the leaderboard the whole week. It was tight in the beginning, and today we did a perfect day because 1 second to wind that gave us the trophy, and we had to sail really well and fight the whole week. Yeah.
From Switzerland.
Coming up, there's boat modifications in Puerto and records to chase at the RDD 1-hour classic on Lake Garda. Welcome back. Still to come, the best of the RDD 1-hour classic. And a sneak preview of the latest in America's Cup testing hardware. First, we're heading back to Puerto as the Para Worlds end and the 52 Super Series rolls into town. They say absence makes the heart grow fonder. A case in point, perhaps, for Harm Muller-Spreer and his star-studded platoon crew as they claim victory in the opening event of the 2019 52 Super Series in Menorca. Next up, Puerto on the Bay of Cadiz, marking the tour's first visit to the venue on the Spanish Atlantic coast.
You know, it's a tricky little place here. We've got onshore sea breezes that are fluctuating quite a bit and quite a lot of current coming into here, so it's a tricky old race course.
I think certainly it's a very difficult venue. I think above everything, this is a difficult fleet. And so anything can happen, and yeah, it's fascinating.
Muller-Spreer had arrived in Puerto with an unexpected modification to his boat.
We decided in Palma to put a new grinder in the back part of the boat, especially in the strong breeze. It's really good to have the weight back. So maybe it's open an opportunity to do better jives than this. We will see. We haven't tried it so far.
Well, 3 on a TP52. It's interesting, but I guess they're going to get the afterguard grinding, which will be interesting. Make them athletic. They'll enjoy it.
With the TP52s racing here for the Royal Cup, Day 1 got underway with Preveza and the new Russian Brunello leading the 8-strong fleet round the first mark. Allegre then took a flyer to the right of the course and passed the Russians, but they couldn't catch Preveza, who held on to take the opening race victory. The breeze picked up for race 2, which suited Azzurra and Sled. The two dominated the race, with the Italians holding on to take the win. Behind them, Preveza sailed home in 4th to claim the overnight lead.
It's been a really good day for us. We're really pleased with our efforts, and we're pleased to come away with a couple of good races.
With the breeze fluctuating between 12 to 14 knots on day 2, owner-driver Doug DeVos steered Quantum Racing home in the first race of the day, before Platoon finally made the extra grinder pay dividends in race 4.
It's great sailing today. It was just, the last 2 days of racing have been really tricky, and a lot of opportunities to get it right. It's all about where you sort of position at the start and your strategy for the first little bit. So, we had a good one today after a couple of bad ones yesterday, and then followed it up with another pretty average one this afternoon.
Azzurra were now overall event leaders, a position they consolidated the next day thanks to a 5th and first place finish out on the water.
Well, we are trying to sail better every day, and obviously we make mistakes, and we need to keep pushing. Every meter counts, so we need to keep working on our meters, and it's just fantastic racing, really cool. I am really enjoying the racing.
When Allegre and South Africa's Phoenix claimed victories on day 7, the USA Sled found themselves in the dubious position of being the only boat not to have secured a victory in Puerto. Going into Super Saturday and the final 2 races, Brunello held a 1-point lead over 2017 champions Azzurra.
Well, I always go in the regattas without expectations, so I'm happy where we are. I'm happy with the work we did this week, and it's going nice to just keep chipping away.
But out on the water, it was Platoon taking advantage of the light breeze in race 9 to put themselves right back into contention for the Royal Cup. That left the prospect of a nail-biting finish, the 10th and final race set to decide the overall winner. With Allegre and Quantum Racing making the early running, at the top mark, the 4 boats in contention for the title were also the last 4 boats in the fleet. It wasn't until Platoon passed Azzurra in the final run to push the Italians into 6th that Preveza's 4th place finish was enough to secure them the Royal Cup.
Yeah, we're really, really excited. It was a tough day out there for every team, and we managed to end up on top. But you can see from the way the points are and the way the racing is that there's not much separating like the top 5 teams out there, and it was great to be amongst it and end up on top at the end of the week.
News now, and while development work continues on the revolutionary AC-75 class foiling monohulls at an event in Newport, Rhode Island, it's been announced that the first World Series regatta of the 36 America's Cup cycle will take place in Sardinia in April next year. It will be the first time that the radical, unballasted foiling America's Cup boats will go head-to-head in racing conditions. Meanwhile, in Italy, the Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli team recently launched a new scaled-down testing boat. While released footage shows serene sailing, behind-the-scenes talk is that even the scale boats can be a handful when it all gets out of sync. The Italians have confirmed they will have a full-scale boat sailing by the end of August, with the British and the Americans expected to follow soon after. If you're after a stage race around France in July, why bother with 2 wheels when there's the Tour Voile? The DM1 design competition celebrates its 42nd edition this year with a route that starts in Dunkirk and ends in Nice 15 days later, having stopped off at 5 towns in between. We'll have a full report on the tour in next month's show as the 23 teams taking part vie for honours across 4 different categories. Finally, Maserati Multi 70, skippered by Giovanni Soldini, was among a record fleet of 90 yachts setting sail from Puerto in Los Angeles at the start of the 50th edition of the Trans-Pacific Yacht Race. The 2,225-mile race to the finish line off Diamond Head, Honolulu, will see Maserati competing against 5 other multi-hulls, including the English Power Play, skippered by Peter Cunningham, and American Argo, skippered by Jason Carroll. At stake, the multi-hull record, set in 2017 of 4 days, 6 hours, 32 minutes and 30 seconds. Going to press, however, news reaches us that Maserati has collided with a floating object, damaging the left side hull's bow and the rudder's wing. It's been 30 years since the very first edition of the RRD 1 Hour Classic, which has now established itself as a highlight of the European windsurfing summer. 100 slalom competitors took on the challenge at Garda Trentino in northern Italy in the best windsurfing conditions organisers Circolo Surf Torbole could have dreamt of for all 3 days of the event. The course was a 2.3-kilometre east-west loop across Lake Garda, with 1 hour to complete as many laps as possible and the greatest distance. The perfect breeze meant some scintillating sailing across the fleet, as well as a few mistakes. But in the men's event, there was no catching reigning champion Bruno Martini, who outpaced the field on all 3 days, with a best performance of 19 laps and over 46 kilometres covered. Behind him came Germany's Malte Reuscher, who picked up the speed record for the event, reaching a blistering pace of just over 32 knots. The first female competitor home was world champion Lina Erdil of Turkey, who completed 16 laps of the course. There was also the foiling 1 hour, and after coming third in the slalom competition, Andrea Ferrin took the honours ahead of his 2 big rivals, Reuscher and Martini, breaking the foiling 1 hour record in the process with 17 laps of the course on the third and final day. Also showing off their foiling skills were 2 Russian women, Irina Gurko and Melania Klizenko, joining the male competitors taking part in the growing discipline. But the biggest cheers of the week were for local hero and now back-to-back winner of the main event, Bruno Martini. Next month, we're at sea for the other Tour de France. And the TP52 fleet head to Cascais as the 2019 Super Series reaches the halfway mark.